What a wonderful world. What a wonderful world.
Hey guys, Marcus Stokes here, and I am trying to do the under Dinette storage that we saw on Facebook. It was a brilliant idea, but there weren't a lot of instructions added to it, so I'm just making kind of an attempt. I thought I would document it to see if it would make it easier for anyone else. So here's where I'm at. What I decided to do was to actually recreate the plywood piece under the dinette because I was afraid that I was going to screw it up, long story short. So what I did was I went out and got some 1/2-inch plywood and just basically cut it to the 2 dimensions, and then just started jigsawing away. So the idea here is that if you look closely, I've kind of drawn a bunch of lines on the plywood, and that's going to allow me to place these guys. The big one goes closest to the sliding door, and the other one goes like that. So the 2 containers were from IKEA. I believe they're called Trofast. They're pretty simple. So this is kind of the idea of how they will sit. This entire piece will flip over and go on the dinette. So again, over on the dinette side, this is just the original. So I basically just took that piece out and traced it. No big deal. So the large container is going to go here over the water lines, and the small container is going to sit on top of the truma. And I spent a long time kind of getting the measurements, and I'm still not sure if I've done it right, but I just did the best that I could, kind of measuring from that wall and from this edge. Alrighty, well that's done, and the good news is I still have all my fingers and toes, and you can see here that the jigsaw put like a little burn mark there. I'm sorry, not the jigsaw, but the Dremel created some burn marks where I was dremeling, but the benefit is I don't have a screw hole, so that my cuts will fit directly in there. I think maybe it goes this way. Yeah, it goes that way. So that my cuts fit directly in there and I don't have like a big screw hole. And that's kind of important because I am using this area to support this piece of wood on the bin that's underneath it. There was one other thing that I forgot to mention. Because I'm cutting big holes in the plywood, I want it to keep it as structurally sound as possible. So if you see this pencil line here, this was the existing cut for the seat belt, and it looked super big. So I kind of reduced all the existing holes, right, just to see if I can make the plywood kind of a little bit stronger. So you see this cut used to come all the way down to there, and I was concerned about the width of this area, so I reduced the thickness here. Both in the width and the thickness, and I'll just double check to make sure the seatbelt isn't fraying against the edge of the plywood or anything like that. If I have to make it thicker, I will, but that was one other consideration I did with all the pre-cut holes. Alright, so I'm gonna put some Gorilla Tape on now and just do a test fitting and see how things are lining up. Alright, let's go see. Oh my word. It looks like it fits. Looks pretty good, right? So I've got this deep area that's gonna take all my shoes and stuff. I'm pretty excited about it. It looks pretty good, and I just need to make sure that there's a water line under here, and I need to just make sure that it's not taking the brunt of the pressure. Of course, I'm gonna bolt it up into this piece of plywood, so it shouldn't take that much pressure anyway, but just in case. All right, so now I want to anchor these. So I bought these
They're called toggle bolts, and it's basically just a simple bolt like this with this connector here. So if you look here, the idea is that this would sit kind of like that. It'll be over here, but just so you can get the idea. And then bolt it from the other side, and then hopefully this will push down. And I got this wide thing because I figured then I'd have more surface area. Since I'm using plastic, I figured the more surface area the better. So now I'm just going to drill some pilot holes and bolt it in.
The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying I love you.
Okay, so you can see what I'm doing. The little anchors end up being on the feet just like this. So you can see I've got excess screw, which I'll probably cut off with a Dremel, but the anchor kind of grabs on to the ridge here, so it makes for a very tight connection. Alright, just a few more of these to go. I don't know why I decided to put 8 per bin. It seems like it's excessive, but I was just concerned about it being strong enough. So and the trick with these little bolts is you got to go really slow while you're threading it, and then you can kind of speed up. So now you can see I've attached both, and like I said before, I had a lot of success with these little anchor bolts. It's really locked in tight. So now I'm going to throw it in and see if it fits. So here are my two hole cuts, I guess is what you call them. So this just drops in there. This just drops in there. And because the container has it's rounded off, so there's a corner for all 4 corners of these to sit on top of, to make sure that you don't have a problem with it just falling through. So there's definitely support there. And since I use those anchors, it's being held up so strongly that I don't think there's going to be any issue with me sitting on this area. At least that's my hope. So now I'm just going to drill a hole, like a 1-inch hole here, so I can put my finger in and pick it up. And then I've got some hinges that I'm going to put on here so that it rotates up like this. And that's going to do it. Well, it's taken me the better half of a single day to do this, but I feel like we're all set. So the only thing that I have left to do now is to do the speaker box carpeting on the top of this thing. But I added some hinges at the back, so these guys just hinge up and down. Right? I've got a towel just protecting the cushion for right now, but it all works really well. And just so you can see, these are my hiking boots. I'm on my way up to Yosemite for a little bit. We are back, and thankfully I have remembered the name of the original Facebook poster. It's Brian Trefizan, who is the one that came up with this, that I've been kind of copying and trying to figure out how he did it. So Brian, thank you so much. We've already used the compartments and they worked very, very well. Everything is set up here, everything is working. And I have a pair of flip-flops, some Nike shoes, some other shoes, and some sandals, all in this container. And the other container is pretty empty. It just has a big beefy power cable. The only thing left to do now is to cover this cabinet. I actually chose to go with speaker box carpet. It's pretty cheap. You can get it on Amazon. And the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to put the speaker box fabric on top of this and trim it down, and then we should be done. So again, I bought the fabric off of Amazon. It was relatively cheap, maybe 10 bucks. And then there was some 777 spray adhesive that kind of was always showing up. So I assume that was the adhesive that's supposed to be used with speaker box fabric. So we'll give it a try and see if it works. And with that, we are finally done. This is the upholstery adhesive. If you want, I will provide a link, but it's very strong and it's actually pretty workable. It's not like you get one shot, even though I was really nervous about kind of folding it or wrinkling it in a way that would make it impossible to get it smooth. As you can see here, I've made the cuts for the seat belts, and I've also made the cuts for the doors. And what's really great about the speaker box fabric is it hides all the imperfections with your cuts and your jigsawing and all that sort of stuff. So now that this is done, I am extremely pleased with how this came out. Like I said, I've got two great containers. I chose white and black rather than the orange and yellow that I think Brian, the original poster, put up. That was just for me because I've got a black and white motif going on here in the in this color scheme. Again, thank you so much for the original poster, Brian. And believe me, I had no tools to make this. I had a power drill, and I went and bought a jigsaw. And if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it. Feel free to talk to me or Brian if you have any questions. But this is a mod that I highly recommend for the 59G model because it really gives you a lot of extra cubic inches for storage. And thanks for watching.